Hi friends, welcome to the Colleagues for Life podcast. My name is Megan Hunter and this is Side Chat. Today on the pod, I want to talk about a mistake I made in my career. And it's likely one you've made or will make in the future too. And maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe it's more of a learning. While I don't ever like to be the word police when it comes to how we use words and maybe not knowing the right word at the right time, because I've been there where you're mentally overloaded or you're in a moment of stress and you forget the words that you want to say. And sometimes we mix things up. We're also more likely to make mistakes, forget words, not say the right words when we are in stress. So I get that. I have a lot of compassion and openness and understanding for sometimes we say the wrong word at the wrong time, or we forget a word, or we forget something that we know deeply because our system is activated and we're in this moment of stress. What I want to talk about today is the difference between two words that separate how we work with people and for people. And I say that very specifically. I'm sure many of us have worked for a leader who you say, oh, I work for so-and-so. And they say, oh no, we work with each other. I may have a title, but we're all on the same team. Are you curious about the mistake? I'm about to say it. The mistake I have made in my career is mistaking trust in a leader for reliance on a leader. The distinction is huge. And you might be thinking, whoa, shouldn't I be able to rely on my leader to do certain things and to lead us and to guide us and to have all the answers? Well, this is in essence a leadership podcast. So there might be some leaders listening being like, yeah, I want my team to be able to rely on me. Yeah, you do to some extent. And you probably rely on the people that you report to as well. Because at the end of the day, I don't really know a lot of people who don't have somebody that they report to. Even if you own the business, you report to a board. Even if you are the chief operating officer of a public sector organization, you have somebody to answer to. You have the government. We all have someone to answer to. We are all put in a position where we have a leader that we can look at trust and reliance and understand why they're two different things and how to operate within them. I'm not saying that relying on other people is inherently bad or something you shouldn't do. I just think it's important not to confuse trust with reliance. All right, hear me out. You ready for it? Trust is about trusting people to be who they are. That also means trusting them to be human. That also means trusting that they're not going to have all of the answers. That also means trusting that they may have an emotional reaction to something even if they're a leader. And they may act out of a stress response rather than a response that moves the team forward. Leaders are human, trusting that they are also susceptible to stress. They also have a leader who leads them. And at times it can be easy to buckle under that pressure and find yourself, even as a leader, acting in ways that you normally wouldn't or you don't believe in as a leader, or you know aren't really okay, but you're doing it anyway because you feel pressure from somewhere else. An example of that would be micromanagement. You see something not being done the way that you would do it or that you would like to do it, or that deadline is coming way too close, so you want to step in. That pressure might be coming from your own internal stress to not fail or not see your team fail, when really you might be taking away an opportunity for the team to show you what they can do, even under the gun, even in a way that you wouldn't want to do it. So that's just an example of why we need to trust that even our leaders are human. Trust them to be who they are. They show you who they are. We show each other who we are. Trust that when you hear something and it's a pattern of behavior or the way someone speaks, that is likely how they are. They're showing you that. And also trusting that because we're human, we are not going to get it right all the time, including yourself. So trusting yourself is also important. Trusting who you are, trusting your own professional judgments, what you know, what you want to do, your own values, and trusting that the people you work with also have those too. Sometimes we don't communicate them exactly perfect, and that's totally fine. What I mean by trusting yourself, and this is the mistake that I've made in my career, is I have come into a couple of roles. There was one in particular a little while ago that comes to mind where I came in with really specific knowledge and an idea of the way that I was being asked to work. It was in the job description, the way that the leader spoke really aligned with what I thought the job was, and it looked like there's a lot of forward movement that could happen. Because I was a team of one, really relied on my leader. I figured the two of us would just move forward because I really believed that I thought my leader was very committed to the process and the outcomes that we wanted to produce together. And I still do believe that was the intent of this leader. However, I think some of that other pressure, and of course when you're bumping up against change, I have the type of roles where I'm always pushing the envelope. I'm nudging people forward, and sometimes I'm negotiating what's a nudge versus what is a shove. And it's not a perfect science. It really isn't. And I think when you're working with another leader who may have never worked with me before, when I'm relying on them and they're relying on me in a certain way, but we don't fully understand who each other are in the workplace, how we work, and also how the workplace is going to receive our approach, it can take things in a different direction. What happened in my case, and what does tend to happen, is the leader will defer to their leader. And if their leader doesn't understand, or their leader sees something different, or there's a pushback or a mismatch or something, that pushback can make it so that it looks like the decisions that the leader is making are quite incongruent with what you thought or trusted that leader knows or believes in. Now, the funny thing about that trust is I trust that leader really did believe in what we spoke about together. That leader really did believe that what we were doing and how we were doing it was the right way. But the how, the feeling of it, the moving forward within a system and a structure was a mismatch for maybe the space, the pace, or how we designed the project to move forward. Especially with psychological health and safety. There's a lot of companies and places where even just the word psychological is still, we can't do that here. But really, psychological is a word to describe our brains. We all have a mental capacity, a brain capacity, a psychological capacity, and we bring our brains to work. Our brains control our bodies. Our brains, the psychology of how the human mind works and interacts socially is what we do at work. So that psychosocial interaction creates one of the biggest risks in the workplace. It is that interpersonal miscommunication that, if gone unchecked, as we've spoken about before, can really change the way that a whole department runs. Even the way that different departments silo is because of some sort of an interpersonal rub, or that leader doesn't like that leader, or that person can't work with that person. It's all interpersonal. And I think if we trusted a little bit more that the leaders that we work with, or the leaders that we are, or the people that we are, trusting that while we may really believe in something and trust in a good intent, it doesn't always translate in those interactions. When somebody is put in charge of you, or you are reporting to somebody, you have an accountability to somebody, you're automatically in a space where you feel like you have something that you need to deliver, you need to prove, you need to get it right. And you defer to the leader. And honestly, that's how leadership has been developed. In a way, is, the leader knows. And this has caused really an unnecessary cognitive load on both leaders and the people who report to them. And I'm talking leaders of any level. I work at a senior level. I've also worked in on-the-ground delivery roles. I've worked in strategy roles. I've worked in all sorts of roles, and I've led teams. I've led large teams. I've led international teams. What I know to be true is that when the leader's positioned as the all-knowing being and the final word, a couple things happen. The leader instinctively, even if they know better, always feels that they're right. And even if they disagree with their team, knows in the back of their head that they have a veto. And then if they say it has to happen, because really they're in charge. They're in charge of the performance management. They're in charge of your job. There's not necessarily a reciprocity there. And that's an interesting position because it puts the people that report to leaders in a space where you have to rely on the leader. And if you do disagree with them and they don't agree with you, they're not as open to that exchange of information. Of course, we do it in a way that's respectful and open and bringing people in. However, if they disagree with you or they don't listen, ultimately they are in control. And that reliance on a leader also creates a complacency in employees. And that's where I was talking about micromanagement as well, is that when people feel as though they can't speak up because there's a reliance that's been built through the way that the leadership receives feedback or even just the structure of the organization, people do become complacent. The bottlenecks do start happening with leadership because people no longer feel as though they can trust their own professional judgment. And you start to see the erosion of that independence that leaders are really trying to foster in people. So it goes back to the first side chat podcast I did on my own, where I spoke about the CEO who said, my job is to ask you what you need to do your job, get it for you, and get out of your way. And trust that I hired you for your professional judgment. There might be a learning in there. It might not always go great, but hey, the CEO would say, I've had a career where I haven't always made the best decisions, or I've made a decision that was the best for the time with the information I had, but it didn't turn out. There's always something to learn and grow from that. When we are aiming for that perfection and we feel like we really can't get anything wrong, especially in jobs where it's not life and death. I had another colleague who used to say, we're not saving babies. We have important work that needs to be pushed forward, but at what cost? Which is that how the work is done is as important as the work itself. If you are doing work that is meant to make lives better for others, you also deserve to have your working environment feel good for you and to make your life better as well. Jobs where we're looking to deliver service to others and we want them to have a good experience or the best experience given the circumstances, we deserve that too. Doesn't mean we don't do hard work, which will be another episode. Is the right hard work feels good? What is the right hard work? We deserve the working conditions that allow us to do our best work, especially when the outcome is delivering service to others. At the end of the day, most jobs are about delivering service to others, providing support, providing a service, providing opportunities, check-ins, whatever it might be to other people to help improve whatever it is that they need from us or that our job is. So I ask you, what areas do you need to trust yourself more and your professional judgment? Where might you be unnecessarily relying on leaders to a point where complacency sets in? What is your individual felt sense of your personal psychological safety in that moment? So where are you unnecessarily relying on a leader? And leaders, where are you causing unnecessary reliance on you? Are you making decisions with your team's voice? Or are you making decisions with the voice of the team you used to have, or what you think it should be? Have you actually asked your team? And are you making that decision? And what do you do when your whole team thinks differently than you? Or they bring something that you haven't considered? There's a lot of ego work that we have to do as leaders in that moment. When the people that you're leading come to you and say, actually, we think this, you have to stop and think, oh, I'm in charge, so I get to choose. I know for myself, I need to step back and think, wait a second, if my job is to uplift the people that I lead or the people on my team, really understanding what they need, where their pinch points are, how I can support them in a meaningful way is my job. I have to listen to them. In that moment, I have two choices. I could choose to just do it my way, and I may have my reasons for that. And if I don't explain that to my team, all of a sudden that is a psychosocial hazard. Or I could sit back and think, oh, wow, I didn't know that you felt that way. And everything that you're bringing up is totally doable. It's reasonable, and it's what you think and you need for your job. You're telling me. I, as a leader, need to trust that if my employees are speaking up to me, A, it's probably not the first time it's happened. B, it got big enough that they felt they needed to say something. And C, there's a huge risk in not listening. And listening to understand. That's the role of a leader, is to trust that the people on your team know themselves, know how they work, and know the work because they're closer to it. And yeah, there's things you can see from the other levels that the people on your team might not be able to see from their vantage point. You might also have people on your team who can do both. They can zoom in and zoom out. And that's a skill and that's a gift that you want to harness on and foster and really protect. The takeaway message is trust yourself and your professional intuition, trust your team and their professional intuition, and find the spaces and places that make sense to rely on each other. Not a blind reliance that, oh, the leader will take care of it, or my team won't speak up, so I'll just make a choice. So that's really it. That was my big mistake, is a misplaced reliance and a less than I deserve trust in myself. So that's my challenge to you, whether you're a leader, whether you're on a team, whether you're both, you're a leader and you're led, which most of us are in one way or another. I ask you to really sit in with what is trust in self, what is trust in others. Can you trust others to be themselves? And can you trust yourself to be yourself? Including the human pieces that come with it, trusting that they're also human, just like the rest of us. All right, love to hear from you. What does that trust look like? And what is reasonable reliance on other people in the workplace? Anyway, until next time, my friends, thank you for being here and stay collegial.